President Weigel, former President Donald Trump over this week's CNN town hall. President Biden tweeted, "It's simple, folks. Do you want 4 more years of that? If you don't, pitch in to our campaign."
An ABC Washington Post poll from the end of April and beginning of May found that Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis each lead President Biden by 7 percentage points, with Biden trailing among young people and struggling among non-white voters, the New York Times writes. However, Biden holds a 2-point lead over Trump in a new Yahoo YouGov poll released Wednesday. Reporter for Semaphore Dave Weigel joins us right now to weigh in. Dave, I think these polls kind of challenge this pitch from Republicans who want to move on from Trump that he couldn't beat Biden in a general election. What is your reaction to these recent slate of polls?
I agree with that, and that's an argument that Republican voters don't believe. They just need to go out and talk to any of them, and any of them, I think, outside the Beltway. Their experience of Donald Trump is that the media tells him he can't win, that polls will tell him he's going to lose badly, and then he either wins or he does better than expected. No Republican will say he didn't do better than expected in 2020. That was kind of the consensus. And so I've talked to Public Opinion Strategies about their polls. They released a set of state polls in the last few weeks showing that DeSantis runs a little bit stronger than Biden does. But I talked to them about it. It just doesn't connect with the majority of Republican voters who think whatever it says, Trump has some ability to win that no other Republican we nominate does.
So when you look at these polls, how rigorous are you finding them? Are you looking deep into, are they only talking to people with phone numbers on record with the voter rolls? Are you looking into how they're contacting these folks and how that might influence results more than they can describe on the top lines of their margin of error?
That's a good question, because there can be kind of junky polls that are just online or that don't reveal the crosstabs. And I think I'm only referring to polls that do have checkable information. I mean, American Greatness and Susquehanna this week, they had polls respectively in Florida and Pennsylvania, and they had the bare minimum of enough data that will tell you, okay, this is a real poll. You can go back and check this. They adjusted for the number of retirees, number of black voters, number of white voters, things like that. I haven't seen pure junk. But Democrats are not releasing their own polls that contradict this, which I think is telling. They do not think this is an election where Joe Biden starts with an overwhelming advantage. If they had data that said that, they'd say so. The most they do is release polling, and you saw this from Navigator last week, that says some of these Republican priorities are really unpopular, which is different. And they will release the survey groups and all that, but they want to change this conversation to book bans, to abortion, to the issues where they know Republicans are less popular. But the Washington Post poll, I saw a lot of people who like to tear these things apart or had put them back together, criticizing some of their conclusions. I didn't hear Democrats willing to do that on the record with their own data.
I noticed as well in the Washington Post poll that Trump had a larger level of enthusiasm among his likely voters as compared to Ron DeSantis. But I was wondering how that changes perhaps in a general matchup in terms of independent voters. So maybe Trump is more excitable in regards to his base, but maybe DeSantis has a better chance with moderates. So what was the breakdown there?
Yeah, that's been a pattern in this polling, is that DeSantis does better with both moderate Republicans and then as a whole independent voters. And this is actually a shift from lots of things shifted from 2016. In 2016, Donald Trump was seen as more moderate than most Republicans by every survey. Voters just knew him as Donald Trump from TV, and they didn't think he was as conservative as other Republicans. He's seen by Republicans as more conservative than DeSantis, which I think DeSantis is going to argue with when he gets in the race. He's seen by voters as more conservative than DeSantis. And that's, if Democrats have any optimism, it's that once we explain this Florida record to people, they're going to be alienated. No one, and I think they're correct that no one with a record as conservative as DeSantis has won a national election. I mean, people can point back to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan in California did not have, he as a governor, the stuff he signed off on had a lot of deals with liberals, a lot of good things that he could run on, abortion rights, things that they used to moderate his image. I think DeSantis has a little bit of that in Florida, some of the environmental policies, teacher pay raises. But he's also tried to implement I think successfully, for the most part, implemented this very conservative, anti-woke, but kind of anti-critical theory. Let's roll back 40 years of the socialist left thinking about how society should be divided along racial lines. He's done that more efficiently than any Republican ever, because those ideas are fairly new. That is what Democrats want to define him with.
What do you make of a lot of the polling that shows both Trump and Biden having very strong, highly unfavorable ratings? What does that mean for if you're, a Democratic Party operative or a Republican Party operative about choosing a candidate that can poll independents? There are a lot of people who are never Trump and never Biden voters. What do you make of that strategy-wise?
Yeah, well, you started to see some of the answer from the Biden campaign with their first ad emphasizing January 6th, their second set of ads emphasize the economy. Their idea there is they could repeat what happened in 2020, which is that there was a core of voters who did not like either candidate, but they broke for Biden. They saw Trump as a chaotic president. They were unhappy with a lot of what he did. So voters who didn't like either of them voted for Trump. Voted for Biden. The difference this year, and this was highlighted in the Washington Post poll, again, a thing that people didn't have a great response to, is that voters view Biden as old and less competent to manage the presidency than they do Trump. They believe that Trump, by 2-to-1 margin, is mentally fit for the job. They believe that Biden, by opposite margin, is not. I mean, by the same kind of lopsided margin. The Biden campaign, and you started to hear this from Democrats who want him to win again, but are not necessarily chugging Kool-Aid about it. That the Biden approach, I mean, he's out there, he gives remarks, but he has not been doing as much media, certainly as Trump did, as most presidents do. The gap is filled by, I think Republicans are very good at this, just clipping videos of him looking incompetent. He's made gaffes that had, I think, a policy impact or statements that people had to roll back. That impression was not there as much as Republicans thought it was in 2020. It is very much there now, and that's a hindrance for Biden, not so much for down ballot Democrats. I mean, you saw this in 2022. There have not been many voters who say, well, I'm worried that Joe Biden's kind of old and out of it and he shouldn't be president, so I'm going to vote for Dr. Oz. That didn't happen. Down ballot Democrats feel very good about that contrast. So they see, now they want to win everything, but they see the voter who has doubts about Biden, has doubts about Trump, as much more horrified by Trump, especially in suburban districts where they're trying to flip back, really 17 of them. They think those voters, or maybe they want a no labels candidate or something at the top, but they do not like this version of the Republican Party. That's what they think at the moment. I think they might be a little bit believing their own hype about it, but that was not wrong in 2022, and they got to dunk on a lot of people who thought that Biden's bad approval ratings meant there was going to be a gigantic Republican majority. It turns out they're right. This version of the Trump MAGA Republican Party is not that popular, especially with people who were voting for Mitt Romney 10 years ago.
To your point, Dave, in 2020, Biden really ran as the return to normalcy candidate, but there's also been a lot of economic chaos. There's a perception of rising crime in cities. So do you think that strategy will be effective again? And also on Biden's tweet here, where he's pointing to Trump's town hall as evidence of more chaos that he could potentially bring to a 24 presidency, is that still a winning message?
Yeah, well, look at the policy response to the Biden administration. So what do they not want to happen in the summer of 2024 or October 2024? They would love for there not to be a surge of migrants coming across the border. So they have gone back on a lot of what they ran on in order to have basically a reconstituted Title 42, ways to expel more migrants from the country. Not a border wall. There's no way they would support that, but a tighter immigration policy. They've not much tighter than they ran on. On the economy, the president they're looking for some sort of debt limit deal, not giving Republicans most of what they want, but something that kickstarts they're not dealing with in 2024. They've not much they can do with the Fed, but the president is signaling, and Janet Yellen is signaling, all right, the Fed can lay off now. We've got inflation falling to levels that we should be comfortable with. They're thinking of just what is the climate going to be. There's not much they can do to control. Will there be flashy crime in the news? Will there be protests? However, you can see from who the White House emphasizes, who it invites to things, Eric Adams until recently, because of criticism about immigration, they really want to emphasize mayors who are presiding over more policing and lower crime rates. They have completely abandoned at least the rhetoric and the reform approach of 2020 for let us have fewer grisly examples of crime, less public disorder in cities. Now, that's not something the White House can just flip a switch and do, but that's what they've been doing in who Biden has supported. I mean, Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles, for example. I think that is what worries them about 2024 and the public perception. They need certain things to just be so obviously improving, not 1984 Morning in America improving, but so obviously improved that when Trump says, wasn't it better 4 years ago, they can say, well, no, it wasn't. And they know they're not there right now.
Dave Weigel
Thank you
from
so much for joining us,
Semaphore.
Dave.
We'll be back with more Rising after this.